Yes guys, Ninja Turtles, the whole 320 cards are out, and we have some pretty banger commons in this for Pauper. So first things first, we will do a list of honorable mentions as we always do, and then we will dive into top 5. I think there are some surprises for you guys. Some cards might be better than you think, and some other cards might be pretty overrated, so let's jump into it. So let's start with the honorable mentions, and let's start nice and easy also. This is the life gain land cycle. We already have life gain lands of every color in Pauper, but if you want to play more than 4, now you have the option. I don't think that life gain lands are particularly amazing in the format, but again, if you want to play more, now you can, and that wasn't possible previously. So in the honorable mentions, we have Food Headquarters and the alike lands that just gain you 1 life when they ETB and tap for 2 colors. Next up, we have something more interesting. This is Guac and Marshmallow Pizza. This is an artifact for 1 green. It's also a food with flash, already pretty interesting with the artifact type. That's a type you really want to see in Pauper, right? When this artifact enters, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. We also untap it, and then, like every other food, for 2 mana and tapping it, we can sacrifice this artifact and gain 3 life. The reason why I don't think this card will be playable per se, but still is pretty interesting, is because the food type is pretty relevant and artifact type is pretty relevant as well. The fact that this has flash makes it super interesting, and at first I was thinking, you know, you want to buff your creatures in decks like Infect or decks like that, but this is not really an Infect card, because in Infect you don't really care that this is an artifact that gives you life. This is not what the deck is about. And then on the other hand, in the decks where you actually care about food, like Food Pestilence for example, you also don't care about buffing your creatures at all. So it's like the effect and the card type don't really match together in Guac and Marshmallow Pizza, but I still think if there is like a hyper aggressive deck that cares about artifacts and plays green, maybe like a version of Green Stompy actually, this is where I could see this being playable. That could be the space for this card, but other than that, I don't think it's super amazing. That's why it's only in the honorable mention spot. The Ice Cream Kitty is a 2 mana 1/3. You can actually pay a black or green for it, which makes it pretty versatile. It's an artifact creature, it's a food cat mutant. Okay, pretty cool. For 2 mana, we can sacrifice creature or token. We draw a card just as a sorcery, and then it's a food, so 2 mana, sacrifice this creature. You gain 3 life. I was thinking where to put this card, you know. I was thinking, does this go into Food Pestilence? And the answer for me personally was no, not at all. I think again, same as with Guac and Marshmallow, you know, the card we talked about before. If you want to play the kitty, I think you have to go pretty aggressive. And this actually looks like a pretty decent card advantage engine in something like Green Stompy if you go heavy on the token route, or even in like Eldrazi, but that's a little bit of a stretch. I think if you make a lot of food tokens, if you play the green token version with Glimmerburn, this could be pretty powerful. If you don't, if you play the Saproling version, I'm not sure if you need this. It's pretty good in mono green in a way that it's a pretty reliable way to give you cards if you have a lot of tokens and just need to refill your hand. But still, it's pretty slow. 1/3 is not a pretty offensive body, and that deck really needs it. And also, it actually slows down your gameplay quite a bit. So if you know where to put this card, definitely let me know below in the comment section. But for now, I don't think this is amazing, but I see some potential for sure. Next honorable mention, Sewer Wayland Scam, 1 mana artifact. It has flash. When this artifact ETBs or leaves the battlefield, we know about this wording and how powerful it can be with Crouch and Relic, right? Because you can bounce it with Core Skyfisher and Glinhawk. So when it ETBs or leaves the battlefield, we may tap or untap target creature. Okay, that's not that powerful, and then for 4 mana we can sacrifice this artifact and draw 2 cards. So again, very interesting. So for this to work the best it can be, you either have to bounce it, which is probably the best thing to do with these, right? Because you get a value when it enters, and then when you return it back to your hand, at which point you can also replay it, which makes it really, really good. Or you have to sacrifice it. If you want to sacrifice it, you will need to play either black, maybe red, or maybe in mono blue and play Abjure. That could be actually pretty interesting. If this card said tap target permanent, not a creature, it would be bonkers, because it would have flash, you can tap lands, and the card would be insane. It says tap target creature. So I was thinking about something like fairies with a bounce package with like a Dreamstalker, but that actually doesn't make much sense. The card only slows you down in that deck. And then if you want to play this in like a Jeskai or like Azorius shells with Core Skyfisher or Glinhawk, I don't really think this effect of tapping or untapping target creature is precisely what you need in that deck. Now maybe there is some combo with this that I'm not aware of, but from purely a value perspective, I don't think this card is good enough. It's really cool that when you don't need this, you can actually sacrifice it to draw 2 cards for 4. That's pretty on rate for drawing 2 cards. So I think in that sense it can be pretty powerful, but I don't really see a deck where you want to play this, because yet again, to gain the most value from this, you need to sacrifice or bounce this. But the tap or untap effect is only good if you play like a fairy package with ninjas in mono blue or something like that, where you really care about your creatures just connecting to the opponent's face for more value. So I'm not exactly sure where to put this. Again, it's like the card and what it doesn't necessarily match, but I still see the potential and I'm not really sure where would I play this. So this is Sewer Wayland Scam. And actually one more use for the Sewer Wayland Scam is that you can use it defensively. So maybe like a mono blue deck with Upture that actually doesn't care about aggression could be a place for this card, because not only you get to 4 mana pretty easily to draw the 2 cards and it actually makes sense in that deck, you can use this defensively and play this before combat on the opponent's turn since it has flash, and then just tap down their biggest attacker, which might be decently powerful. Now there is nothing left to do than to jump into the top 5 of the list. So at number 5 we have Raphael, Duff Turtle, 2 mana for a 1/3. It's a legendary creature, doesn't die to cast down, but we can't have more than 1 copy on the board, and it's a mutant ninja turtle. It has the Alliance ability. Whenever another creature we control ETBs, Raphael deals 1 damage to each opponent. Oh, so we have Impact Tremors as a creature now. We had Molten Gatekeeper previously, but that card was mostly played in Dredge, and this is definitely not a Dredge card because the unearth is so important. If you don't know guys, Molten Gatekeeper, it has the same effect, but it's a 3 mana 2/3 with unearth for 1, which makes it really good in Dredge. This card will not be played in Dredge, but I think where this could shine is, if you guys remember, there was this Gruul deck which played the Impact Tremor package with Molten Gatekeeper as well. It played like Riding Chrysalis and really cared about tokens, and that deck was actually pretty powerful. I think if you play Raphael, Duff Turtle in that deck, it could make it more consistent, because then you don't need Impact Tremors, which means you can have Raphael, which is a creature, and then you could play something like a Winding Way or Lita Stampede in that deck for even more card draw. So if that's something these decks want to do, I think Raphael could be extremely powerful, and if not, I'm not really sure where else you could put this. Maybe there are some mono red shells that like go heavy on tokens and Goblin Bushwhacker that want Raphael, but I'm not exactly sure if Raphael is necessarily great in these shells. It's a 1/3, which is not bad, and it's relatively cheap, also doesn't die to cast down, so maybe there is some potential in mono red as well, but I'm not super sure about that. I'm curious what people will do with Raphael, and regardless, I think the card is definitely quite powerful and the power level is there for Pauper. At number 4 on the list, we've got the Mechanized Ninja Cavalry. This is a 2 mana for 1/1. The mana is Boros Hybrid, which means you can either pay a white or a red for it. It's an artifact creature, it's a robot ninja. When this ETBs, we create a 1/1 robot artifact creature token. So the baseline is 2 artifacts for 1 card, and they both are creature. So that's already pretty good. I see a couple decks where this could be playable. You can either play this in an Affinity Shell with Marinforcer, because we already know, because of Blood Fountain, how powerful can 2 artifacts in 1 card be. Or, and I think this is what I will try, I'm not sure if this card actually fits into that deck, even though it looks like it does. You could play like a Boros Synthesizer Shell, but more aggressive with Bushwhacker. Again, we see this type of card quite often, just a 2 mana 1/1 that creates a 1/1, they are all pretty bad. But the fact that both of them are artifacts actually makes me want to try this and play it in like an Affinity deck, because the sooner you play this, the sooner you can play Refurbished Familiar and Marinforcer if your deck is into that, and that makes it pretty powerful. Also works with Thoughtcast and stuff like that if you are going for blue. So I think from the cards that could support this Affinity, Boros Synthesizer deck, I think this one is still the worst one. I think the one I'm about to show next is a better one, but I think the Cavalry still could be very playable if it finds the right home, which is probably Boros or like a version of aggressive Affinity. Next up on the list, we've got a card I personally love. I'm not sure if it's like great or anything. I actually actually think I will try playing it, and I think it might be successful. We have Mauser Foundry at the spot number 3. This is a 2 mana for an artifact. When this artifact ETBs or leaves the battlefield, we've got a Courage and Wording again, we create a 1/1 robot creature token. And then for 5 mana we can sack this artifact and lightning bolt a creature. The 5 mana ability is okay, it will definitely just come up in the grindier games later in the game, but I'm taking it at face value. You play this for 2 mana, you get a 1/1, not great, but then if you bounce this, you get another 1/1, then you replay it, another 1/1. I mean, that's quite a lot of creatures, and they all are artifacts. Combined with the previous card, with the Cavalry, I think there could be like a Boros deck, even with Goblin Bushwhacker, that utilizes this pretty well. Since all of them are artifacts, your Mirror Enforcers, if you decide to play them in that deck, could actually be extremely fast on the board, which already, if you combine it with the aggression of Boros, that could be a pretty powerful deck. Now, the Mauser Foundry is a little slow. It would require to go into like a mid-range plan, even though in that deck you want to be pretty aggressive. I just think the wording on this card of ETB or leave the battlefield works amazing with the cards we already know, Core Skyfisher, Glinhawk. Obviously, if you play this in the deck, you probably want to play Experimental Synthesizer, and it could create like a new Boros Synthesizer shell. I'm extremely curious how people will respond to this card and which decks will emerge from it. I will definitely try to build a Boros shell with this card. I think Mauser Foundry is super cool as far as flavor goes, and also I think the power level is there, and I think it deserves a number 3 spot. At number 2, and let's talk about this. This is Leonardo Big Brother. It's a 3 mana for a 1/3 with Sneak. Oh, Sneak, that's a new mechanic. Let's see what it does. I will make it simple. It's basically a ninjutsu that can be countered. And what's really interesting, a lot of cards in this set have Sneak, even if it's not a creature card. I've seen like an instant with Sneak, so it's not only on creatures, but in paper, all the commons are creature based if they have Sneak. So it's basically a ninja, right? It has Sneak, not ninjutsu. Sneak is basically fair ninjutsu. It's ninjutsu, but it's not an activated ability, it's an alternative cost, so you can actually counter Sneak. And Leonardo gets +1/+0 for each other creature we control. This creature is legendary, which means 2 things. Doesn't die to cast down, and then you can have more than one you can't have more than one copy on the board. I've seen people say that this card will completely break White Weenie and push it to tier 1. I've seen this quite a lot lately when we've seen the spoiler of Leonardo Big Brother. And I actually disagree. I think the best card in the set is actually something else, and it's a canyon between those cards. I think the other card is better by far. The reason why I think Leonardo Big Brother is an upgrade to White Weenie, but I don't think it will break or push the archetype much further, is because let's take a look at Spider-Man Webslinger. There was absolutely the same hype as it was around Leonardo with Spider-Man Webslinger. This is a 3 mana 3/3, it has webslinging, so we basically may cast this for 1 white, same as Leonardo, if we return a tapped creature we control to its owner's hand. Now there are some differences between those 2 cards, right? So let's talk about them. Leonardo, because of Sneak, will actually replace the damage of the creature. Spider-Man doesn't replace the damage because the creature usually just attacks first, deals its damage, and then you play Spider-Man by returning the creature back to your hand. Leonardo, if you have more than 1 creature, is just already a damage improvement, so in that case it's better than Spider-Man. The good thing about Spider-Man though is in White Weenie you play cards like Ramosian Rally, you play Battle Screech, you play Prismatic Strands, which are ways you can tap your creatures without attacking. So if there's like a Riding Chrysalis on the board just preventing you from attacking, you still can cast Spider-Man Webslinger and get value because of those cards. You can't really cast Leonardo Big Brother that well. And let's talk about how big those creatures will be on average. So for Leonardo to be as big as Spider-Man Webslinger, you actually need 2 other creatures, right? Which is pretty easy in White Weenie. It's a given in the mid game if the opponent doesn't have a board wipe. Early in the game, where you usually actually want to sneak Leonardo in, it might not be the case. So I think these cards, Leonardo Big Brother and Spider-Man Webslinger, are awfully similar. I also think that Leonardo is a little bit better because of the fact that you replace the damage of the creature with Leonardo's attack, which is actually pretty good. But since Spider-Man didn't make huge waves in White Weenie, people usually play 1 or 2 copies, and some people just don't play Spider-Man and cut it from their deck completely. I think that Leonardo will not be as big of an upgrade great white weenie as people think. I was thinking like Orzhov Blade, but again, Spider-Man is not really played in Orzhov Blade as well, so will Leonardo be? I'm not really sure. I think this will see some play in white weenie, similarly to Spider-Man, but I don't think it pushes the archetype to the new level as some people think. This is my rating of Leonardo. Definitely let me know below if you agree or disagree, if you think this will blow up white weenie up to the sky or if it's just okay. And we are at the very top of Ninja Turtles. This is spot number 1, and I think there is a canyon between Leonardo and this card. I think this card is pretty amazing. This is Oroku Saki, Shredder Rising. Let's take a look at it. This is a 3 mana 3/1 for a legendary creature that's a human ninja. Interesting. It has Sneak 2, which we already know what it does because of Leonardo. It's a ninjutsu that can be countered. Cool. And whenever Oroku Saki deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card and we lose 1 life. So this is awfully familiar to one card you guys already know and a lot of you play, and that's Ninja of the Deep Hours. Still, there are a lot of differences between Oroku Saki and Ninja of the Deep Hours, so let's talk about it. First off, this is a black card. I think that black ninjas are surprisingly powerful and underrated. Black and Orzhov, for that matter, where I could see this being played, have a lot of cards that want to be bounced. The best one is Refurb. I think Refurb is insane when bounced, but still, if you play Orzhov, there are Inspectors, there is Glinthawk, there is Skyfisher and cards like that, which in my opinion is good enough to make black ninjas powerful in general, and they are. We see Gang Shinobi played and we see Mukotai Ambusher played as well. Those are both very playable Pauper cards. The first difference between Oroku Saki and Ninja of the Deep Hours is the total CMC. The mana cost is 3, Ninja of the Deep Hours is 4. Now, this doesn't matter as much because your deck is usually built in a way where the sneak or ninjutsu, it's super easy to use. So this shouldn't matter all that often, but still, if you want to hardcast this, it's much easier to hardcast than a Ninja of the Deep Hours. Now let's talk about Sneak. Sneak is of course worse in general than ninjutsu because this can be countered. That being said, there are not many great ways to fully counter this. Of course, you have hard counterspell. Fairies and their Spellstutter Sprite, that's pretty hard to reach. You need 3 fairies for this to be fully countered, which I don't think is super easy, especially against black decks, which have a lot of removal. And you know, even the Orzhov decks still do have a lot of removal, so that should be fine. And then yes, you can like force spike this and stuff. Some people play Ascent Scatter, Glorious Gale, cards like that, so yes, it's more vulnerable. The good thing is, from what I can gather, that returning the creature back to your hand is part of the cost, which is really sweet. So you still get some value because of course, if you return a creature to your hand in a deck where ninjas are present, it means that the creature gets some value on an ETB most of the time, right? So that's pretty cool. And then the bottom text of drawing a card whenever it deals damage to a player, it's very similar to Ninja of the Deep Hours, right? But you lose 1 life, which can be a problem against burn decks, but generally I think it's still well worth it. The main reason why I think this card is actually pretty sick is because it's a black legendary creature, which actually makes the card kinda immune into a lot of black decks, and I will tell you what I mean. So let's take a look at a black deck like Dimmer Fairies, or Dimmer decks rather. What I meant is black removal, right? So Dimmer Fairies or Dimmer Tear. The most common black removal spells we have in the format are Snuff Out, of course, especially in Dimmer decks, right? And you know, decks like Gardens and stuff like that. And Cast Down. This card doesn't die to either. It's a black card, so Snuff Out doesn't work, and it's a legendary creature, so Cast Down doesn't work. Those are the most common and popular black removal spells in Pauper, so I think that's pretty cool. It also doesn't die to Spinning Darkness, but I think that's not played as much anymore, so that's not super relevant. I think this goes into Orzhov Blade, no questions asked. It also might go into some, you know, black control decks. I definitely have some decks on hand that could utilize Oroku Saki. I think the best deck is definitely just Orzhov Blade. It might actually completely change the deck. I could see playing a version where when you actually don't play Lembas anymore, because that's just an artifact, it's not a creature, and instead you play Oroku Saki. You can use the Glinthawk to bounce like Grimbauble, Stiding Blade, stuff like that, and you go for Oroku Saki. Maybe in that deck, for all I know, you can play 1 copy of Leonardo as well, or, you know, 2. The big downside to Oroku Saki though is that since it's a legendary creature, which can be a huge upside in the format, is also you can't have more than one copy on the board at the same time, which means you're pretty restricted in deck building. I think you usually play 2 or 3 copies, even in a deck where you really want a ninja effect like this. And it sucks you can't have more than one on the board, but I still think the power is there. It's a new toy for these black or Orzhov decks, and honestly, maybe even for some other colors. I think Oroku Saki Shred Rising is the best card in the set for the reasons I've explained just now. So I think Saki is really good. I'm really curious where this will card go, into which archetype, and how good will it perform. I will definitely just buy 4 copies and try to make some new decks work. So this is my review of Ninja Turtles. Let me know below how much you agree or disagree. I would love to hear it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps a lot, and thank you. And with that being said, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, and bye.